Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of those classic films that every film person should see. I hadn't seen it, so I watched it. The thing that struck me most, actually, was the number of shots in the film that I thought were original to other movies until I found out they weren't. Let's take a look. Take this scene from the original Star Wars, released in 1977. The Millennium Falcon is docking in the Death Star in this breathtaking fashion, the likes of which no one had ever seen before, or at least that's what I thought because I hadn't seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. But look at this shot from the 1968 classic. It's hard to deny the similarity. Now, does this mean George Lucas was ripping off Stanley Kubrick? Not necessarily. Filmmakers often pay homage to other filmmakers that inspired them by ripping them off in the good way. Again, look at this scene where the escape pod jettisons from the blockade runner in Star Wars. Cool, right? Now, check out this scene from A Space Odyssey. Oh, wait, what? Hold on, let's put those side by side. These shots are so similar that it cannot be a coincidence. In fact, Kirby Ferguson compared these same two shots in his now classic documentary, Everything is a Remix. And that explains a lot. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the comments. It's a must-watch. Now, what about other sci-fi? Remember Passengers, where Jennifer Lawrence does CrossFit in space?
There's another passenger away.
Yeah, you may have forgotten this scene where Chris Pratt also does some jogging. Oops, that's not Chris Pratt. It's Keir Dullea, all the way back, and you guessed it, 1968. And speaking of Passengers, remember these cryogenic chambers where people can space travel in suspended animation? Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. Stanley Kubrick was already putting people to sleep way back in 1968 with his sci-fi classic. And while this looks familiar, I prefer Jennifer Lawrence, so let's go back to that. Yeah, much better. I'm sure you all remember this emotional shot of astronaut George Clooney floating away into space. This is Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity in 2013. Impressive, right? But maybe Gary Lockwood wasn't impressed because he did this exact same scene when George Clooney was only about 7 years old. A great scene from Christopher Nolan's Interstellar in 2014 was when this discombobulated astronaut played by Matthew McConaughey goes tumbling down some kind of an LSD space-time wormhole. I don't know. The scene is incredibly original unless, of course, you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey and then not so original. Now, what about this scene from Elysium? Beautiful. Probably nothing like that from A Space Odyssey. Oops. Let's look at these side by side. We have to call this paying homage. The only other alternative is rip-off. Okay, take a look at this scene from Inception. Cillian Murphy walks into a big black room filled with black squares and approaches some old guy on his deathbed. Well, that's completely different than this scene in 2001 where Keir Dullea walks into a big white room filled with white squares and sees an old guy on his deathbed. No, actually, once again, this is paying homage. And we could probably go back and turn the tables on Kubrick and look at earlier films where he borrowed visions from other directors that came before him, but we'll save that for another video. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments below, or if you didn't enjoy it, you can also let me know why. To be honest, I'm still trying to find my voice on this channel, so any input you give me is appreciated. Until next time, grasshoppers.